Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap. Not as happy as last week, obviously, but we got to take the good with the bad on this roller coaster. And joining me on the ride is none other than Macca. How you going, Mac?
I'm better than I was yesterday watching that rubbish that got served up.
Oh, look, it's one of those things, isn't it? We got to. I'm a little bit philosophical about it. We're still a young team and we're still developing, and the Bulldogs got us on the inside really badly, and we just didn't have a counter in the end, did we?
I didn't think we had very much at all, I just thought that in terms, we were undermanned. I accept that. I also thought we were a little bit under effort as well, which I didn't like.
Yeah. Look, thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube and also on Discord, of course. We're live and interactive as always, so if you want to have something to say and you're on the Discord live stage, you can stick your hand up and we'll get you on for a chat. Otherwise, chat away in the YouTube and Discord chats there. It's always good. We get about, we get anything between 700 and 1,000 chat messages a week, Macca. It's fantastic.
It is. That's very good.
Yeah, and some of it even makes sense.
A fair bit.
Oh, let's not give them too much credit, but they go all right in the chat. Look, as I said, thanks to everyone who's joined us. Don't forget, if you're watching us on YouTube, give us a like and a subscribe if you like what you're listening to and watching. We're always looking for more subscribers as we try to hunt 1,000 subs, Macca. We're 2/3 of the way there, and we're inching our way along. So make sure, if you're watching on YouTube, spread the love, spread the word with your mates who might barrack for the Crows and want to have something to listen to on a Sunday night that isn't biased Victorian rubbish or hyperbolic bullshit like cane corns. We try to do our best. We try to do our best, don't we, Macca, to be balanced and give some people some actual Crows talk rather than all the usual bullshit.
We do our best, mate. We can't always be perfect, but we do try.
Absolutely correct. All right. Well, look, without any further ado, and before we get on to, what is always our main reason for being here, which is the Crows game, why don't we have a look at the weekend that's just been, because it reasonably interesting weekend. Interested in your thoughts on the Port game. Port getting up over Melbourne in a wet slog by 4 points in the end, 80-76. Port in control for a lot of that game, but kept the door open for the D's, and they almost stepped through, but Port prevailing in the end.
Yeah, it was an interesting game because before the game, I looked at Port and I thought they got no Dixon, they got no Marshall, and they looked a little bit too small. And because if you looked at the rucks, they got Gawn and Grundy, and up forward they've got about 3 talls, and I thought, they'll overpower them. Then the rain came and actually went the other way around because Port were undermanned with talls.
Yeah.
And it just suited them a lot better. But having said that, they still had to do the effort, and I thought their effort was outstanding. When you look at what Butters did, for example, 40 disposals and just risking his body so many times to get the ball. Rosie, he was outstanding, and then he kicked the winning goal. And Horn Francis, he sort of gave us a taste of what he's going to be in yeah, you wish sort of you had him after all because he played pretty well. So I thought it was, if you wanted to sum it up, I thought a dedicated Port, suited by the way that got up and beat a better rated opponent.
I actually thought Melbourne played arrogantly and lazily, whether they're just going through the motions. I recall that, in Geelong's halcyon days, there were times during the course of the season where they looked a little bit arrogant. I felt like Melbourne looked a little bit arrogant. Goodwin's going to have to be careful of that because it's all right to be on cruise control and try a few different things and different setups and all that sort of thing. But at the end of the day, Melbourne lost a game that was just really all about getting the footy. And at the end of the day, Port just wanted a bit more, I thought.
Sums it up.
Another interesting game, North doing everything right and then stuffing up their interchange at the end to hand the victory to Sydney by 3 points, 93-90. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry on that one.
Well, bloody cruel finish, really. I mean, there's no doubt the side set themselves to try and win the game for Clarko's sake. And I mean, they even had a break at the 23-minute mark for number 23, his former number. And it was a vastly improved effort by the Roos and should have won the game. But then that it's just like in the dying 30-odd seconds of the game, 2 players came off and 2 went on. But unfortunately, they only had one interchange left. And
they only had one left, yeah.
Yeah, and I just can't believe that you got an interchange bloke there. And apparently they had been warned by the AFL that they were getting close. They had been warned. So, I don't think that guy's going to be doing it next week. But, no, disappointing. Because it would have been good if the Roos had won.
I mean, look, it would have been. But this is a professional league. This is the highest standard of league that you can get in Aussie rules football, and for a professional club to make that kind of a mistake was just ridiculous.
Absolutely. They had a couple of good youngsters in Sheasel and Wardlaw. They went very well, so they'll be good.
Yeah, well, Sheasel's had a good year, so yeah. And in the boil over of the round, of course, we had Freo or Wallyerlup, something like that. 29 points over the Cats. The Cats at Optus Stadium, I guess they needed to drop one at some stage, and Freo played quite well.
Look, they won the game in the middle, really. Darcy absolutely slaughtered them in the ruck, and Brayshaw and Sarah, they got just heaps of the ball. In fact, Geelong really didn't fire too many shots at all because no big Geelong player got more than 20 disposals. And, if you're in that situation, you're not going to win the game. And if you have a look at the team stats, Freo won every team stat, and the only one they didn't win was turnovers. Geelong won that one. So, Geelong not so good when they're away from Alphabet Stadium.
Well, I wouldn't go that far. I mean, it's I don't know. I'm not reading too much into that one. I just think it was a good win for Freo, and I don't think it affects Geelong too much. The Q clash, the Suns disappointing. I thought Brisbane easily in the end by 43 points, 107-64.
Yeah, the 43-point margin sort of disguises a little bit though, Dean, because the Gold Coast were very competitive for 3 quarters and 5 minutes, and they were about 5 points down, and but that was unfortunately where it stopped, and Brisbane went into top gear, and they had a very powerful midfield. I mean, Dunkley, Neil, Ashcroft, McLuggage, and Neil, he was at his very, very best for the game. He went right back to his very best form. He won the Ashcroft medal. So, they just slaughtered them in the midfield, and then they had Danaher at forward that could convert. As I said, the Gold Coast were quite impressive for 3 quarters. They did find a young gun in Humphrey. I mean, 26 disposals and best for Gold Coast, sorry. And it was only probably 4th or 5th game. So it's not all doom and gloom, but they did disappoint in the last quarter.
Look, at some stage we have to stop saying good effort, Geelong, and I think that happened at the beginning of this season, Macca.
Gold Coast, you know.
Good effort, Gold Coast. Yeah.
Well, yeah. Look, yeah, I do agree with you. I thought we had a really good game on our hands, and then it just died in the last quarter. So you are right.
Yeah. They got to be better than that. Look, and the game of the round easily, the Essendon and Richmond game. Essendon getting up by a point right at the death, 71-70. I wasn't the highest quality game, but certainly exciting finish.
Actually, apart from the game, it was a great spectacle pre-game, and also at half-time.
Fantastic.
I just thought it was done so well. And then a good footy match to go on with it. Not the highest of standards, but close and well thought out. And Essendon kicked the winning goal with 8 seconds to go, which absolutely pleased me because I was barracking for them. I'm always barrack against Richmond. Merritt was outstanding. You know, he had 39 disposals. Taranto was very good for Richmond, but not the same quality of disposal that Merritt's got. As I said, it was a great spectacle, pretty good game to watch, but not high standard.
No, not the highest of standard. And look, the Eagles pretty much today cementing their spot in the Harley Reid medal. It was an absolutely woeful performance where you're talking about the bottom team playing the third bottom team, and you get an 116-point drubbing. Goodness me, Macca. Goodness me.
Well, I'm not going to honour them by giving them much of a commentary at all. When you get beaten by 116 points, I want to make one comment. Gaff, 10 disposals. Look, mate, if you're not interested in playing AFL football, give it away, because you are supposed to be a good footballer and you were just a lazy squibber. And they've probably got about 6 or 7 players at the moment of AFL standard West Coast, and that's where it starts and stops.
Well, I would say playing to Adelaide, to AFL standards, they've got more players that are AFL standard, but they're just not playing to it. And you know, West Coast are prone to these sort of seasons. We've let them off the hook the last couple of years because they've had, and even this year, you know, terrible injury count and all the rest of it. But by God, you know, they were contending 3 years ago, and now they're an absolute rabble. I reckon 2/3 of the SANFL could beat West Coast at the moment.
Yeah, I reckon I couldn't disagree with that.
I mean, it's just disgusting, and how there's no commentary on Simpson, I don't know.
I don't get it either. I mean, if any other club, he'd be attacked, but surely this would be his last year. Surely they have to do something. I mean, as I say, they're not even worthy of discussion.
No, not really. And then the other games today, we had Carlton failing by 28 points over Collingwood, 85-57. Collingwood just too good, really.
Well, you know, that's the 5th loss in a row for Carlton. So Carlton aren't a very good side, Glenn. Collingwood swept them away in the first half, which I thought was some scintillating football. Where they sort of run in waves and they go zigzags, and they really they played unbelievable football in that first half. But then after half time, Carlton did come out and they competed a lot better, and they started to tag certain players, and they actually kicked 3-9 to 3-2 in the second half. You know, they didn't do it smoothly, but they did have opportunities and they blew it. But Collingwood, you can see why they are one of the premiership favourites, and I think you can see why Carlton are probably not regarded with merit too highly at all, going by the game. I thought Darcy Moore was outstanding in the back lines, and I don't know whether it was a medal.
Jet, Darcy Moore.
Yeah, unbelievable game. Yeah, and I just want to make a comment, which I did read in the commentary about the game. The Pies have won 17 of their last 18 at MCG, and that's only since round 11 last year. I mean, it's not an even competition by a long, long chalk.
Well, I mean, we'll talk briefly about our situation with the draw shortly, but I think at some point it didn't seem to be this disjointed until they changed the way they did the fixture, and they were trying to plug in big matches every week and all the rest of it. And since then, since they changed the way they did it, they divided it into 6-6-6. Although you wouldn't know it given bloody Melbourne's draw this year. But anyway, it just seems to have you're right, Macca. So we don't get to the MCG until round 15, and we've probably done more kilometres so far as a club than any other team in the competition. Yep. And I don't care what anyone says, that takes a toll. And apart from the home ground advantage, it's hours in a plane, it's a disrupted or adjusted training schedule, all the rest of it. You can't tell me that doesn't make a difference.
It's a massive difference. It's an unfair competition.
Yeah, and the games that we do play at the G, it's Collingwood and Melbourne, isn't it? Two of them.
Yeah. It's always got to be one of the big four.
Yeah, so it's Collingwood and Melbourne, and I can't remember the other one. Might be Carlton or Richmond or someone.
Essendon and Richmond.
Essendon, there you go. Oh, Essendon is at Marvel, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but look, it's ridiculous. There's a good chance that we will play, if we play finals, it's a good chance that we'll be playing away at one of those two venues, and we hardly get a sniff at it.
Yeah, it's just an unfair competition.
Yeah. So, will they listen? Will we kick up a fuss? I mean, I understand the mentality of, you got to win anywhere, and that's fine. And absolutely you do. But it borders on ridiculous. Like when you look at, and look, not for 1 minute do I think that's why we lost this week. But when you think about the fact that we have played in 3 regional centres already, in Geelong, Tassie and Mars, we played 2 games at TIO.
It's unfair.
What the hell, Macca? Do we play at Canberra this year?
I don't know, but we probably will.
Do we play the away team in China or something? I don't know. It's just, I don't know. It doesn't seem right. It's a problem that I think needs to be resolved. And I was only thinking about this not long ago, and it's something I meant to raise with you at the time. Remember when the non-Victorian teams were dominating the competition, and Eddie Maguire had a slight, cardiac arrest about it, and there was this big summit between all the Victorian clubs about how they were going to strengthen the Victorian side of it and all the rest of it. And how many non-Victorian teams do you reckon have won since then, Mac? Not many.
No. And that's going to be very, very hard for non-Victorian teams to do it.
Yeah. Last game of the round, of course. I didn't see this one, but I was following the score, and it seemed to be a close one all the way. But the Saints getting up in the end by 12 points, 92-80.
Yeah, look, I watched the last part of that game. And Toby Green, I mean, he's a damn good footballer, but there's something wrong with him mentally. They're about 8 points down. They've got it in their forward line. There's about 5 minutes to go, and there's a bit of a tussle, and the umpire calls for a bounce, and Toby Green just turns around and punches somebody in the guts, and the ball gets cleared from the area when it may well have been after the throw. Could have been a chance for a goal. I mean, he's a good player, but gee, there's something unbalanced about his thinking.
Yeah, and as Go Crows in the YouTube chat points out, Max King returns and kicks 4, and probably the difference in the end. Yeah,
they're saying in the chat it was soft, but and it was soft, but you still did it. The umpire saw it.
Yeah, and Max King?
Sorry, what was that?
Max King?
Max King, 4 goals. It was a welcome return down there. And I think probably the difference because GWS, they just never had the same counterpart down there. They were just relying on random players to kick goals, whereas they did have a target at kick with Max King back.
I think it makes a big difference for St Kilda. I think he's a very important addition, Macca.
Oh, well, it always lines up the way you attack it, doesn't it? I mean, it's like no Walker for us, and we had no balance going forward.
No, Walker made no difference to our game. We'll go into that in a minute, but I didn't think that was the case at all.
Well, we may dispute that point, but coming back to the point at hand, you're quite right about Max King. He gave us the tall target. He does kick for, and as I say, and the ones he doesn't get, the Crummers get a chance at.
Yeah, so they might rejuvenate a bit, particularly when the other lad that got concussed against us comes back as well. It gives them a couple of targets up there, so Saints not out of it yet. Let's have a look at the ladder quickly. Collingwood obviously in front now, game clear. Brisbane and Port now jumping into the top four on 32 points. Melbourne on 28, remaining in the four, with St Kilda and the Western Bulldogs and Geelong. St Kilda and Western Bulldogs on 28 points. And then a 2-game gap, Macca, which is interesting, to 2 teams in and 2 teams out. Geelong and Adelaide in on percentage. Geelong with a healthy percentage. Essendon and Freo just out. Then you've got Carlton, the Swans, Gold Coast, Richmond, the Giants, Hawthorn, North and West Coast. I think there's no doubt at all that Harley Reid will either head west or they'll get a couple of nice tasty picks for him to go to North or Hawthorn.
Well, there's no doubt the West Coast are going to finish bottom because there's no way they're going to win any more games.
No, they're just not.
But I just wonder whether they'll even apply for an extra pick. North Melbourne got one year, and they look so bad they just might get it.
Look, it's not out of the equation. I don't necessarily know how I feel about it, but it's not out of the equation.
I don't like it. I really don't like it. I think if you're down the bottom and you're rotten, that's your problem. But they've handed them out before. I think Carlton have got a couple, and North Melbourne have got at least got one.
Yeah, I would think that West Coast would try to. I don't think they'll take Harley Reid, to be honest with you. I think they'll try and turn that into a couple of picks, which is what North should have done with Horn Francis a couple of years ago.
Yeah, they should have.
So just a reminder, those that are on YouTube or in the Discord chat, if you do want to have your say, please stick your hand up. We've got a nice healthy audience tonight, healthy numbers. I don't know whether they're feeling crook or not, but so if any of you guys want to have something to say, I notice Vardy Magic's in there, Macca. Vardy Magic's in there. Silent as always. Stick your hand up and we'd love to have you on board. Just before we move on to our game, what did you think about the whole situation with Clarko and the Indigenous review down at Hawthorn?
I've never seen anything mismanaged so badly, actually, the whole situation. I mean, the situation was that they lodged their complaints. So the AF and Caroline Wilson had the 2 guys getting executed virtually on the spot. The AFL then said they were going to set up an inquiry. It took them a month to even get people set up, and I don't seem to have done much in the last 7 months. And now they've got a situation, they're talking about mediation, but the Indigenous side of it want admission of guilt and recompense before they even start mediating. So, I mean, that's never going to work. So Clarkson and Fagan are actually saying they're not going to have mediation because of they themselves, they may be suing for their reputation. So it's just a great big mess up, and it's a way that, Gil McLachlan, for all the superb adjectives he gets given to him at times, I think he's a ditherer, and he just bumbles along until things eventually happen.
Do you think so, Macca?
Yeah, well, 8 months. 8 months we're talking about. I mean, it's a situation that should have been resolved very, very quickly, I would have thought. I mean, either something was said or things weren't said.
So my take on it is that they did exactly what they had to do to make sure that this the details of this weren't made public in a way that was confirmed. It was an absolute whitewash by the AFL.
Oh, it's
and
going
we
to be.
we said this was going to happen right at the outset, Macca, that they would make it go on and on and on until it just became like untenable, like it just became a whitewash. And that's exactly what's happened. I don't think Gil McLachlan is silly. He's not silly. And the AFL aren't silly. And I think that they've let this go on. They've left it up to the parties. The parties haven't been able to come together. The Indigenous people involved have not wanted to come to the table in terms of mediation. I think they've hung a few people out to dry. I think particularly Clarkson and Fagan, they've left them out hung them out to dry a bit. But I also think that thanks, Ryan. I also think that the AFL and Clarkson and Fagan would have been having discussions. And I found it very interesting that Kennett came out on the day after Clarko took leave and said, look, the AFL can't handle this. It wasn't supposed to become public, that report. Once it did, it just got out of control. And what we need now is for the AFL to put a judge in charge and just get it sorted. And within 24 hours, that's exactly what happened.
So, but yeah, it's still it's either deliberate or accidental and then deliberate whitewash by the AFL.
Yeah,
and
I'm not. Sorry, go on.
Sorry, I was going to say, surely they have had so much criticism. I just don't understand. It probably is deliberate. I suppose you're right, but 8 months. You just don't go on for 8 months. That's ridiculous.
Mate, look what they did with the Essendon investigation.
Well, there's either the truth or there isn't the truth, and they just got to find that out. And I don't think it is that complicated to find it out.
I don't think they were interested in finding out, Macca. They've always wanted to bring this to the mediation table. They've always wanted to make restitution under the cover of an NDA, a non-disclosure agreement. They knew that neither party was ever going to come to the table in a public forum, and they just let it play out and let it play out and let it play out. Fantastic poker game by Gil and the AFL. Fantastic poker game, in my opinion.
But as an individual, do you think that is a very good thing to do? I mean, they might have.
Of course not. Of course not. But like that's not what we're debating here. I think there's a lot of interesting things that have happened around this case, Macca, and I don't want to spend too much more time on it, but we'll spend a minute on it. First of all, it was the report that Hawthorn commissioned. Let's not forget that Hawthorn commissioned a survey of past Indigenous players to gauge whether or to address issues that had occurred at Hawthorn, and a lot of those were around Cyril Rioli and how he left, and the fractured relationship that he has with the Hawthorn Footy Club. And let's face it, Jeff Kennett was implicit in that from what he said to Cyril's wife or partner. So that report was supposed to be internal, and then however it occurred, Egan got hold of it and leaked it to the press, and the ABC ran with it. And then, from there, it has just been a tug of war between the AFL and the interested parties about how it was going to be handled. And the AFL was never, ever, ever, ever going to turn this into a public firing squad for those three Hawthorn coaches. Those three officials, Clarkson, Fagan, and the other guy, footy operations guy. Never, ever was that going to happen. So they have just let it run, in my opinion, until it gets to a point where what will happen now is that it'll be mediated out and we'll all get on with our lives. And there'll be a book written at some stage in the future.
Yeah, I just think it's disgraceful. Absolutely disgraceful.
Yep. And for all this to occur in the week leading up to Indigenous Round is, I wouldn't even call it ironic. I think it's just sad. It's such a double standard. And I don't want to get our podcast into hot waters. I don't know who's right, who's wrong. I don't know what happened. All I'm commenting on is my view on the way the AFL have handled this, which is the same way they have always handled crises, Macca, and that has tried to... Andrew Demetrio's mantra was always to try and keep things in-house. He tried as hard as he could to do it with the Essendon saga, and in the end it just got away from him. But this is AFL Crisis Management 101, Mac.
I just think it's a thorough disgrace. A thorough disgrace. And if it happened in any other walk of life, anywhere else, it never got away with it.
Yeah. So, and it's damaged people. I mean, more power to Chris Fagan for continuing on with the job. Obviously, Al Clarkson, it was getting on top of him in terms of the publicity, and you hear reports of him not being served in service stations because of what he's alleged to have done. And, that's the problem. And that's where the AFL had an obligation, in my view, to get it sorted for the betterment of all parties, and as a consequence of them not doing so, people's lives have been affected negatively, not only directly by the people involved, but indirectly with wives and kids and children, all the rest of it. So, but that's what the AFL does. As PJ and I have talked about before, there's a very good book out that will let you know exactly how the AFL operates. And this, to my way of thinking, is just AFL Crisis Management 101, unfortunately.
I still think there could well be legal action involved in this situation.
I don't think so. It'll be mediated out. There'll be money paid, and that'll be the end of it.
Well, that might happen, yes.
Yeah, it'll never get to a court. It'll never get to a sworn statement, Macca. It will never get to anyone giving any evidence under oath. I'd bet a lot of money on that.
I think you might have hit the nail on the head there when you said that it'll be paid off to go away.
Yeah. Anyway, look, enough about that. We shouldn't be surprised, but it is disappointing, as you say, Mac. Let's talk about the Crows game, and equally disappointing, Macca. In the end, it was only a 45-point margin. It should have probably been a 90-point margin, really. The Dogs kicking wastefully, 11-19-85 to Adelaide, 5 goals, 10-40. And as much as last week was a complete team performance, Macca, this was a complete shambles.
Yeah, look, you stole my line. I was going to say I thought the margin should have probably been double what it was, given the fact that they absolutely trounced us. And
yeah, they did.
I thought, and as I said to you at the start, they turned the clock back 2 to 3 years to performances we used to put up at that stage. And I know we had good players out in Walker, Duday and Phil Thorpe, and unfortunately Hinge got injured. And yes, okay, you don't necessarily have all the personnel you want, but you still within you have to have effort. And if that was the best effort that some of our players have given, we're not in very good shape. In fact, if you look back at some of our performances, many of those players were a long way down on their efforts. They were reacting rather than acting. Right? They were just trying to stop rather than create.
It's exactly right, Macca. We was led to the ball all day. Not once did I feel like we were making any effort to be first to the contest. And they beat us at our own game. I mean, really, they were first to the ball. They were better around ground ball gets. They were able to get it to the outside. They spread really well. Everything basically that we did against St Kilda, they did to us. And unfortunately, we had absolutely no drive out of the contest whatsoever. And what happens to a Crows team when we can't spread? We just go up and down the lines, and that's exactly what happened. We weren't able to get any width on the ground whatsoever. We weren't able to break them up at all defensively. And that's where I think my argument is regarding what you mentioned earlier with no Tex, no Crows. I don't think Tex would have made a scrap of difference, Macca, to be honest. It wasn't lost in the forward line.
No, it certainly wasn't lost in the forward line. I was just saying the forward line had no structure. But that was more probably, you're probably right in the sense that he wouldn't have reversed the result. He would have helped a little bit. But, yeah.
I just don't think it would have made a scrap of difference.
Oh, you take out a dud and put in a walker, it's got to make some difference. But it's not enough to bother the scorers too much. I just didn't like we were happy, too many players just happy to chase bums and rather than get their hands dirty and get in there. And, I could probably name 3 or 4 players that I thought could hold their heads up high. I thought Leddy could. I thought Jones could. I thought Pedler could. I thought O'Brien could, and probably Murray could, and Dawson to some degree. And after that, I looked at the rest of the side and I thought, you all stink.
Yeah, they didn't seem to have an appetite for it, did they, Macca? Obviously, I think there was a couple of worrying signs for me from a couple of players. I'm not going to say that Josh Rochelle is soft, but I feel like in the last few weeks, what I'm noticing more and more about Josh Rochelle is that he chooses when to go, Mac.
Yeah, he does. And there was actually, I thought there was one blatant squib actually in the game by Rochelle, actually making sure he never went, because if he went there was a good chance he might have got knocked over. So
yeah,
there was one incident, and I thought there was one last week as well. So you are right. He does pick his moments. Look, he's a bloody good player. Don't get me wrong, but he certainly doesn't like to take the risk of getting flattened.
No, and that's a concern. That's a real concern from my point of view, Mac, because we all know that finals are physical games, and we can't afford to have, if you'd asked me at the start of the season who I thought might play like that, I would have said Isaac Rankin. But to be honest with you, I think Isaac has surprised many by his willingness to get involved in the contest. I wouldn't have thought Josh Rochelle would have been that, and I hope that it's being pointed out to him in the tapes and in his review, because I don't want a pick 6 to end up being like Rory Atkins.
I don't think he's anywhere near an Atkins, but
I don't know, Macca.
But he doesn't do it like consistently throughout a game. But there's just those 1%ers where you know if you take the ball, you're going to get absolutely cleaned up. And I think he just takes shorter steps, so he's not quite there. And you're right about Rankin. Rankin is okay. He doesn't squib at all.
No. So and there, I felt like. I would have been. Look, if I was to say who was more costly out than out of Walker and Duday, Duday definitely, particularly when Hinge went down too. We lost any drive at the back of the contest, and we spoke last week about a lot of our disposal winners being off half back: Miller, Parnell, Duday, and Hinge, and I actually thought Hinge's the loss of Hinge hurt us terribly, probably as much as it hurt him. And Tom Duday not being there also just really left us a little bit unbalanced. I thought Parnell tried hard, not so Miller. I thought Miller was back to his old ways, particularly in the first half. But we lost a lot of drive off that half-back line, and I think that hurt us more than Tex not being there, Mac, in my opinion.
Well, you can't argue about that because that's where the ball was living down that end. So, Duday would have been very, very handy to have, and Hingy's been in great form, and to lose him so early in the game, yeah, I think that just opened the defence right up because those two have been the stars in defence. Butts is a negator. Murray is I thought Murray played reasonably well, and he gives 100%, and he thumps and he bumps and he hurts and he tackles and all the rest of it. But by the same token, the other two actually take marks and use the ball well and give it to teammates. Parnell, I thought, tried hard, but some of his disposal was disgraceful.
Yeah, I thought our whole team, our disposal in the wet was shocking. It wasn't just Parnell; it was bloody everyone.
Well, yeah, it was pretty well widespread. I thought Jones is one of the better users of the ball for the team. I thought he played up to the standard that he's been playing, and also I thought he used the ball reasonably well when he had it. One of the few that actually did.
Yeah, and as Rabbit rightly points out, we double grabbed everything. We couldn't take the ball cleanly. We fumbled and stumbled around. It felt like we were rabbits in the headlights. And, that's where, like, a lot of people have jumped from one side of the fence to the other very quickly. To me, it was just a game where they didn't turn up. They weren't switched on. You can't, people that are very quick to start, calling for this person to be dropped and that person to be delisted and all the rest of it. You've got to look at a body of work because every team, particularly a younger team, goes through games like this. We've had a tough run. It was a shit day. And yes, you want them to stand up. And certainly when we're contending, you want them to stand up. We're not contending yet, Mac. And so I don't want them to put this in the bank and throw it away, but I don't want people to be dwelling on it because we have actually been playing well for the majority of the season. And we played an excellent game against St Kilda. St Kilda, who were above us on the table. So, let's just cool our jets a little bit before we start calling for the whole squad to be turned over,
I said agree with you, I think you just have to say it's. We went to this bloody ground at Ballarat, that freezing cold, rotten ground. As I say, we're tourists. We go touring around Australia. The boys had a good game at home last week. They were. I don't know whether we were down a little bit in personnel, but in terms of attitude, we were down a long way. And as you say, I'm putting it down as a one-off. You just can't have that many players playing badly all at once and just drop everybody, as you say. It's just one of those things that happens now and again. A team just goes absolutely shit house, and they did it all on the same day.
Vardy in the chat saying his concern is we're relying on Adelaide Oval comfort zone too much. We beat Hawthorn and Tassie, and we only just lost to. We put up a pretty good performance against Geelong at their shithole.
Yes.
We were up and about against GWS until we started melting. I don't think it's a reasonable statement at all. And by the way, do you think that the Victorian powerhouses might rely on the comfort zone of the MCG a bit? So you're entitled. Do you think Geelong, rely on the comfort of their shithole every week? I mean, That's what home ground advantage is all about, and that's why the issue of the fixture is such a big deal.
100% agree, Flint. You just summed it up well. And look, we go to so many of these shithouse grounds that we're eventually going to put in a real bad one, and this was it.
Yep, it's not the performance we hope. The disappointing thing, I think, from my perspective, is that out of the little block of games that we've had, which finishes with Brisbane next week, I felt like this one was key. We had a very good win against the Saints, but we've kind of negated that one by putting in the performance that we did against the Bulldogs. If we could have just turned up and given this one a shake. But by the same token, I think the Bulldogs taught us that you only have to be off half a peg and you'll get blown away in this competition, particularly when you're up around the top half of the premiership ladder. They taught us how you needed to play, the intensity you needed in these conditions. So, good learning experience, and we are in a learning phase, Mac. So, a terrible game, a horrible game for us, but let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Yeah, I think St Kilda are a perfect example. St Kilda looked like that last week when they played against us, and then they've gone on to GWS and they've beaten GWS in a very competitive game. So you're quite right. It's not the end of the world. I mean, it's just a really rotten game, and it was terrible to watch. And I can understand our supporters, wanting to burn their membership and all the things on the spot when you go really mad and stupid at the time. But when you sit back and think about it, you just have to say, well, just a shithouse game, and we just move on.
Yeah. All right, let's look through some of the disposals and just see how shit we were. The disposals, 399 to 298. We might as well just shut the podcast down right now. Kicks 225 to 194. Handballs 174 to 104. That's an insane differential there. Inside 50s Massive. For all of that possession. Inside 50s 54 to 41. Both teams' disposal efficiency down, but ours was down a little bit more than the doggies. Our efficiency. It's bloody doing this stupid thing again. My apologies, people. Our efficiency inside 50s, only 18 shots from that 41 inside 50s. Our delivery into forward 50 was diabolical, let's be honest. It was rushed. There was no system. We didn't spread their zone at all, so we were kicking into packs all the time. It was just, we were relying on opportunist goals. We weren't creating anything. We weren't making ourselves hard to defend, Macca. In my opinion, it was very easy for them to defend us. They had Lockie Jones there and, a couple of others, and they just, they dropped Tim English back a little bit sometimes, and we were just very easy to play against. Free kicks, I didn't think the umpires had their best game, but not that it made any difference, but 19 to 12 in Doggy's favour. This is the one I wanted to talk about, Mac. 72 to 35 hit-outs. So Riley O'Brien has beaten, in terms of the basic hit-out stat, he's doubled English's hit-outs. And yet I think from all of those, from 72 hit-outs, 16 went to advantage.
Yeah, I was going to raise that particular point. He actually, in terms of his ruck work, he got the hand on the ball a lot more than English did. And I remember two beautiful taps he did. Unfortunately, they went to the opposition right down their throats on their own. And that's one of his major problems, that he worked, the guy, he worked his guts out. He's one person you cannot say did not try. He really gave everything he's got to give. It may not be enough, but he gave what he has to give. But the problem is that he, for all the time he's been in the AFL now, you would think he'd be starting to direct the ball a lot better than he is.
It's a real problem in my opinion, Macca, and we've talked about it ad infinitum this season. But the connection between Riley and our midfielders leaves a lot to be desired. And Riley's not always going to win the ruck, but when he is winning the ruck, we don't get any advantage out of it. We may as well play Ned McHenry in the ruck and rove to the opposition's ruckman, because we don't get any advantage at all out of O'Brien, particularly in the middle. He's not as bad at stoppage, although at times, again, there doesn't seem to be any connection between what he's doing in the ruck around stoppage and where our midfielders are, particularly at boundary throw-ins at times. But in the middle, he's just... it's pointless having him in there.
Yeah, look, around the boundaries, he is a lot better around the boundaries, because he generally just hit it forward, and it just depends what angle it's going to go at. But whereas in the centre, it's got 360 degrees it can go, so you're not really sure where it's going to end up. Whereas you've got the other major ruckman, I was watching in the Brisbane Gold Coast game. Where two ruckmen who, if they got the tap, it went to a player. And they're good ruckmen.
Yeah. And the interesting thing, there's a stat that's only recently emerged because, there always seems to be one stat that Champion Data seem to just sort of pull out of their arse every year that no one else gets to see, and that was they were talking last week about it, the first possession out of the clearance or something, which is like the next possession. Which, and they were saying that we were fourth or something in the league and whatever. And, it's interesting when you think about that stat and you look at our clearance numbers here, 50 clearances to 40 overall, 14 centre clearances, 36 stoppage clearances to 6 and 34. And yet we got no value out of any of those clearances, in my opinion. And that is because the Bulldogs didn't commit too many to the contest.
You mean at the centre bounces?
Well, anyway, particularly
around the ground. They're very good around the ground with their midfielders. I mean, they had Smith running around like an unregistered dog, and Bontempelli, he starred as usual. So
yeah, but you're not picking up what I'm saying, Mac. I'm saying that we may have won those clearance stats, but we got no value out of them because we had too many in at the contest and not enough outliers. And I think that's kind of where we were hurt by not having Didnt and Hinge, because they're very good at running off their man and providing that outlet out of the stoppage. And when we didn't have that outlet out of the stoppage, we had nowhere to go. So often we would get the hat kick out of the clearance or the misdirected handball or what have you. But I would love to have seen that next possession stat for this game, because I reckon we would have been slaughtered at it.
Yeah, I see what you're getting at. No argument there.
Yeah. So, and that's why I think Didnt and Hinge hurt us a lot more than not having Tex. And, because we never got that run. And it's exactly how we played against St Kilda. We'd get the ball to the running half-backs and they would, spread the defence by changing lanes and using those diagonal kicks. We weren't able to do that in the wet. Now, whether it was the wet conditions, whether it was just that we weren't organised in terms of our midfielders or what have you, but it was a completely different game. There was no contingency for not having those runners. Miller wasn't as effective in providing that run. Brodie Smith seemed to be hurried with a lot of his disposal and was dump kicking as he always does. It really shows us how important, particularly Hinge. That's not what I meant. Hinge.
That's dear. A very good one there, Fig.
Yeah, it's been a big weekend. It shows us how important Mitch Hinge is to our clearance work.
Sorry. Yes.
Hinge helps us get. Oh God, let's just move on. Jesus Christ.
Every time you say it now, I just can't stop laughing. Sorry, mate.
All right. Shit. All right. Possessions, contested possessions, obviously the other one, 164 to 129. Sorry, my screen's bouncing everywhere. And uncontested posies, 231 to 154. So they beat us at ground ball, and they also beat us on the outside, Macca.
I don't think we won anywhere, mate. I can't really think of anywhere that we won.
No, we got pantsed. Simple as that. So mark 77 to 63. It wasn't really a marking day. Mark inside 58 to 5, contested 7 to 5. But here's the other one that tells you how much we missed Minge and Tom Didnt. 73 to 57 in favour of the Bulldogs. Bailey Dale across half back there. We had nothing. We had no intercepts.
No, we didn't because we didn't have the people there that were capable of doing it. I think they're very ordinary. As you say, Smith, he's not an intercept player normally. He gets a mark here and there when they miss kick, but like the Dudays and the Hinges, they actually get the hard ones, and they got good disposal as well. So that was really lacking. It's just Swiss holes in the cheese there, unfortunately.
Swiss holes in the cheese.
Yep.
What the fuck is that?
Well, I mean, there's just places, things missing.
Holes in the split. Yeah.
But
we're having a good night tonight, mate.
Well, you talk about.
Going really well.
I'm only talking about cheeses. You were talking about minges.
All right, we've got a new person here that wants to have something to say. It's Raid. So I'm going to invite you on, mate. Hopefully your microphone's working. And how you going? What do you got to say?
Hello, how are you? It's actually the Arab child, but changed my name back to the other one.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah. How are you guys? Just want to say that to bring some light into this week, kind of, is that it's good to see that our picks from 2018 actually started to roll out, because apparently that year was a super draft. For example, we've got Isaac Rankin, we've got Chase Jones is also playing pretty well. Our super little, like, what do you call him? Ahmed McHenry, who comes in and just does something incredible every week in the last quarter. Jackson Hately needs to pick up his game. But it's nice to see that this draft, especially the 2018 first rounders, are doing all right now. That's just. And the other thing is, I want to say, let's just give this week a mulligan because it was a wet weather, it was terrible. The players will seem really tired. None of them really wanted to be out there, and that's fine. They're just a young team. I think we should just move on. That's what I think of this week.
Very good summary, mate.
We're going to give it the Ross Lyon mulligan?
Yeah.
We should.
All right, mate. Thanks for that, mate. Good to see you. Yeah.
The only thing I would dispute about Arab today is about the 2018 draft is we allowed Port to trade the situation to get in front of us to get Rosie, and we could have had Butters. So, I'm glad that Jones is actually starting to show that he's going to be a footballer. And McHenry, I must admit, is a very good super sub. Whether he's the answer for a full game, I don't really know. So I still don't think 2018 was a super draft for us. It might turn out to be a reasonable draft for us, but not a super draft.
Look, Matt, I've put a bit of a rule in place about you looking back at drafts, but I won't disagree with you on that one. Rankin and let's say Rankin, Jones and McHenry versus Rosie, Butters and Dersma. Yeah.
We've been... the Rosie Butter things, they're two very top players. Well, I think I'll tell you one positive thing I really did like about the weekend and about the game, and there wasn't a lot of it, but it was really, really good to see somebody go in there in the centre bounce and clear it or fight like hell for it. You know who I'm talking about. Pedler.
He's my favourite.
Well, and with very good reason too. He is going to be, over the next 2 or 3 years, no injury to hold him back, he's going to end up being a bloody champion. This guy really, really, when he goes for the ball, he really goes for the ball. I mean, seriously, some of his stuff is humongous. I just really love watching him. And he actually asked whether he could have a start on the half forward flank and then work his way eventually into the mid. Next year in particular, he'll be probably one of our main men in the mids. This guy I just love the way he fights for the ball, and once he has got it, he's a good user of the ball. He's got a lovely kick. I just think he's great. And I thought he didn't get the opportunity that he should have, because he spent some time up forward where the ball wasn't. But once he got a couple of runs on the ball, well, I just feel he showed us what he can really do. And yeah, he's one of the bright things that came out of the game.
Yeah, we also saw Chase go in and have a few CBAs, which I thought was a good thing, and didn't disgrace himself as well. So, I like Chase's trajectory. Would I like to have seen it occur a bit quicker? Absolutely. Is he the match winner that we hoped from a first round pick? No. But better than having to delist like a Gallucci, I guess. He's an integral part of the side now, Jones, I think. With his run off the wing and rotating through the middle and his ability to push forward. So, I'm comfortable with where Jones is. A couple of questionable selections, Mac. We knew a month out that it was going to be cold and wet. And I know that we always want to chop out for O'Brien, but given the conditions, was Himmelberg the right replacement?
Only about 359 degrees out of the 360 out, and it was just a disgraceful selection. It was going to be useless. You could just see that the type of game it's going to be, the type of weather it's going to be, the type of ground it's going to be. He wasn't going to. I mean, he certainly wasn't going to bother English. And he's never.
He actually rucked all right.
Yeah, but it just didn't really add nothing into the game. It still didn't add anything because of the fact we need the ball, people to get the ball on the ground and get it forward. So it should have been a runner, not Himmelberg. I think it's wrong selection.
Well, I guess that's what I'm getting at. I would have played I would have considered bringing Cook in or someone like that. I thought the Gallant inclusion was a good one, and Lockie, for all the shitty forward delivery, tried hard.
He did.
I just felt like, I understand. The whole selection seemed a bit programmed. It looked like that we dropped Tex because it was an SANFL bye, so it wouldn't impact the SANFL team terribly much. I felt like we took Ned away from the from the sub role for no particular reason. I mean, the game was set up for someone like McHenry, and Sam Berry has been playing all right in the twos, but I don't think he warranted coming in. We got 13 disposals from McHenry's last quarter of AFL football. We got 13 disposals from it, and he gets dropped for someone who really hasn't been shooting the lights out in the twos. Certainly hasn't been demanding selection. That's for sure.
I think McHenry's got every right to feel hard done by. As we say, 13 disposals in one quarter, which is I think more than what's his name got in the whole bloody game.
Yeah, Berry. Yeah, Berry was quite disappointing, and we'll go through some individuals in a second. But I was hoping that the game might be set up for Sam, but I don't know. He's having his second year blues a year late, I think, because he's just not around it at the moment.
No, look, he had a good first year and an even better second year, but I don't know what's gone wrong. He's actually hasn't gone on with it this year, and he certainly shouldn't have been picked.
No, I don't think so. Well, certainly not on form. And look, SANFL form can be a little bit hard sometimes, and sometimes you've got to ignore it to a degree. But, a midfielder's a midfielder, and a bloke playing midfield who's pushing for AFL selection should be racking up numbers in the twos. I was actually a little bit surprised, Macca, and don't fall off your chair, but I was actually a little bit surprised they didn't pick Matty Crouch.
No, I agree. It wouldn't have surprised me. I wouldn't have been upset if they had it.
Well, again, a horses for courses situation, and I guess the fact that we've got Laird in there as the in and under player, but given that it was going to be a bit of a contested ball situation, it would have, having Crouch in there might have actually freed up Sloane to be a little bit more outside.
Yeah, and I 100% agree with that. Because Dawson was being tagged very, very heavily.
Yeah.
He had somebody hang on to him all the time. In fact, should have received several frees for that, but didn't. But I know I thought Crouch would have been actually a very good selection for this game.
Yeah. Anyway, let's look at some individuals because there were one or two players that tried. Rory Laird, as per usual with Laird, he did all right. Let's just try and move that down a bit. Chop off his head, the poor bloke. There we go. That looks a bit better. He had 34 disposals, Macca, 17 kicks, 17 handballs.
You just can't criticise his effort, Payne. I thought he tried his guts out.
No, I'm not criticising his effort. I'm a bit. His heat mat looks like he's looking for Mitch Hinge, really.
Or the other.
Oh my goodness me!
Oh, God.
Someone has taken the piss there, surely. Oh. I'm dumbfounded. Anyway, look, I thought Lairdy stood up quite well.
You had Surf's comment, didn't you?
Oh dear. All right. Went at 74% disposal efficiency, which isn't bad under the conditions. 16 contested possessions, 19 uncontested. Turned it over 5 times, 3 intercepts. The trouble with Lairdy, as always, is that we don't get a lot of metres from him, and he often doesn't hit the scoreboard. He had 6 score involvements, so pressure acts 27, 380 metres gained, which wasn't terrible, I guess. 10 clearances, 5 round stoppage, 5 in the guts. 10 tackles, which when you consider the team tackle number, is pretty good. Without doubt, our best player.
You stole my line. Yeah, definitely. 100% agree.
I think the problem was more about configuration.
You mean who else was in the middle with him?
And just how we kind of set up. I mean, Jesus Christ! After 5 minutes of the game, you could see that Bailey Smith was going to have a bloody ball terror. We should have been sitting someone on him. Surely to God.
Well, he ran around like an unregistered dog, as if he didn't have an opponent.
Well, and it was obvious. It was obvious that he was the driver out of their midfield more often than not, and we just Rabbit. I would have put keys on him just to keep him honest. To be honest.
Can you tell me who Keys was on?
I don't really. I think Benny Keys is. I don't think they actually know what to do with Ben Keys at the moment. To be honest with you, he runs around.
I just couldn't work it out. What he was supposed to be doing.
Yeah, Chase Jones, 23 touches, 19 kicks, 4 handballs, 3 tackles, kicked a point. Had a much more PG heat map, which is good. Went at 65% disposal efficiency. Had 8 contested and 10 uncontested possessions, 5 turnovers, 4 intercept possessions. Only 2 score involvements. 618 metres gain though. That's he's really starting to put in stats, Macca, that you want off a wing, which is good. It attended 4 centre bounces and got a clearance out of the centre, and also got 4 round stoppage. Only the 3 tackles. I'd like him to get a little bit more physical because he can be quite physical. But 5 rebound 50s was good. Just continuing a very solid vein of form, in my opinion.
Yeah, look, I probably had him very close to our second best. I can't think of anybody else that was ahead of him. So
I'm actually really disappointed that I didn't think of saying Rory Laird's in a rich vein of form while I was watching his heat map, but I just didn't think of it at the time, so my apologies.
Yeah, no, I think Laird followed by Jones. I think you mentioned the two good ones at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, and after that, Geordie Dawson, as you said, got tagged a bit, and he's just come off a little bit. As we said, he's getting a lot of attention at the moment. 12 kicks, 10 handballs, took a mark, 6 tackles, 1 goal, 1. Actually, I think they might have actually dropped him back in the last quarter, did they, Mac?
Well, I was actually thinking earlier in the game that he should have gone back, given the way the game was going, to try and direct it a little bit better. But I think he may have gone back late, but it was just probably pretty pointless at that stage.
Do you know, it wouldn't have been a bad move, Macca, to once we lost Hinge, it actually wouldn't have been a bad move to get Dawson out of there, out of the contest, and just leave the contest up to Laird and maybe Keys. And
I agree.
That's probably a move in retrospect that they should have thought of. Everyone wants to see Geordie in the midfield, but when you got to do what you got to do, and I think it might have been a good time to actually try to get some run on that outside of that contest, just get the ball going.
Yeah, look, they were wearing him like a second skin, so I think it would have been a very good move to move him back there in the back lines, because that would have given him the opportunity to float around and direct the back line, because they were actually like headless chooks, actually.
Yeah. 323 metres gained, so we didn't get a lot of distance out of him. 34 pressure acts was good, 7 clearances, 2 in centre and 5 round stoppage from 15 CBAs, 4 inside 50s. It was a workman-like game from Jordan, but not a lot of impact. So we discussed, they probably could have used him a bit better. Again, we look at Luke Pedlar, and you see he had 13 disposals, 9 kicks, 4 handballs, 3 marks, a tackle. Didn't hit the scoreboard this week, which is a shame. But he doesn't have to get huge numbers to impact the contest, does he?
No, look, he, as you say, he only had the 13 possessions, but I still had him my best players because of the impact that he has when he does get the ball. And really, the players should lift around him the way he goes in so hard for the ball, and he can win a ball off of one-on-one. He just rips it off of them and pushes them away, and off he goes. I mean, seriously, so I said, he's like a young Dusty. He is a little bit like Dusty, but I just think he's going to end up being a little bit classier.
Well, the only thing that I'd say about Luke Pedlar is that he's in and out of the game. When he's in the game, he catches your eye straight away because he's such a bulldog, right? But he's in and out of the game a bit. And we don't get a lot of... I don't think we get a lot of defensive pressure out of him, Macca. When he's in forward 50, I noticed he didn't have any forward 50 tackles or anything like that this week. Not that the ball was in our forward 50 much. But he's playing that hybrid role where they're playing him and Murphy quite high, obviously. But I think in a game like we had on the weekend, where we're just kicking it up and down the line, you almost need to drop one of them back and have them in and around the contest so that they can actually impact at ground level. And I thought Luke sometimes got caught a bit high up the ground.
Yeah, I don't know. Look, he did well when he's on the ball. But as you say, he's playing mainly on the half-forward flank. Just the way the ball was being delivered, it wasn't being delivered like precisely. It was just mainly bombed in there, and probably not to the advantage of Pedlar or the other forwards as well. I would have hated being a forward yesterday.
Yeah, well, if you look at where most of his possessions are, they're up around the wing, Mac.
Yeah, well, the way that the game was played with the ball mainly in their area, that's pretty natural that the half forward is going to come up to there.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. I would have liked to have seen him more. Like the amount of ball that came around that outer wing, and you can see there he's only had 2 possessions inside forward 50 on that outer side. We kicked a lot of ball to contests around there, and it just seemed to flip straight back out. And I just feel like at times he's playing too high for the position that he's playing at. Because I would imagine that some of those possessions around the middle were when he was actually playing on the ball. But I think we just got to be a bit careful. When he's playing in that forward role, he really does need to concentrate on playing that forward role.
Yeah, although if you roll the tape back to last week, though, he played on a half forward flank and with about 6 attendances CBOs. He played the half forward position very well. That was because we were bringing the ball in, so he's therefore dropping back deeper. Unfortunately, he's at a side where the ball's down the other end. So I think it's just a natural creep up that you do because you're hoping to get yourself into the game.
Look, I'm not going to put too many more up. There's a couple that disappointed me. We've talked a little bit about Ben Keys. Only had the 11 disposals, Macca, and I felt like this game was set up for Ben Keys. And at the moment, we're just... I think we're a little bit confused about him. We don't want to drop him because of the intensity that he brings, but is he really bringing the intensity at the moment? I don't know.
No, well, I don't know either, Pete.
Well, what do you think?
Ask me again. Have
you been on the piss today?
No, but I was actually reading something. I just got caught. You caught me out.
Yeah, you listen. You look too much at the chat. Who cares what these people say? But I noticed Vardy Magic hasn't put his hand up yet.
They were being amusing again.
Ben Keys, we pick him for his intensity, but he's not really like the game was set up for him. This round, I thought, and yet we only got 6 kicks, 5 handballs, 4 marks, 3 tackles from him. I would have expected. He should be disappointed with that effort.
Yeah, it was that type of game that at least when there were clinches and scraps to get into. Unfortunately, the game did flow a little bit quickly going down their end. I think caught him out. It would have been better if there'd been a more even game. I think he would have had more of an effect, but he didn't have a good game. I agree with it. He didn't get to do a lot, and he didn't get into the clinches as much as he should have. And I just thought he got caught behind most of the time.
Yeah. And we tended to leave him up forward. We only had 3 centre bounce attendances from Keys. And again, it just surprises me that we didn't get him into that mix, particularly as a bit of a hard tag on Bailey Smith.
Well, it would have been better than doing nothing, because as you say, when he was up forward, he was just wasting it, absolutely wasting it.
Yeah. I thought Darcy Fogarty was a bit disappointing, although I'm prepared to definitely give the forwards a mulligan this week, given the entries, the quality of the entries. But, I don't know whether Darcy did enough to get up the ground to try and make it harder for them. A lot of his work was done sort of just at 45, if you know what I mean. He only got 3 possessions outside forward 50. 2 of them up on the wing. That's probably where not having Tex hurts us, because we didn't have that link player. Not that we would have used it this week, because we weren't transitioning in any sort of cohesive way. But Darcy's got to find a way sometimes to impact the contest when it's not going in our favour. I think that's what's going to elevate him from being a good forward to being a great forward.
He played too far back, Cleaner, because of the fact that the ball wasn't coming in deep enough. It was just coming in short all the time. I mean, we can't really have a real crack at him because of the way the ball was coming in, because it wasn't really coming in deep right up into the goal square or very, very often at all. And when were kicking it forward, we weren't really trying to kick it to the player's advantage. So many times it was just bombed up there with no particular target in mind. So I would have hated to be a forward, and I think he gets a pass for that. By the same token, he could have actually probably tried to push himself into the game a little bit more by coming up higher, expecting that this is going to be the case, because it wasn't getting down deep too often. So
that's kind of what I'm implying, Macca. I feel like at times Darcy can be a bit of a slave to how the game's being played, and that's what I mean. I think for Darcy to elevate himself to the next level, he's got to be able to work himself into the game when it's not being played on his terms, right? I would have got on my bike if I was Darcy, and look, it may well have been against team orders or whatever, but I would have had Himmelberg playing deeper and Fogarty up the ground, trying to actually make it more difficult for Jones and taking Jones out of his element, which is obviously that intercept mark. We did it so well the previous week, taking away a key interceptor, and we just played into their hands this week. But I think, that's probably my only criticism of Darcy at the moment, is that when the game's not played on his terms, he finds it very difficult to change that. He's a go with the flow type player. If it's working for him, great. But he can't impose himself necessarily.
Can't argue with that. He got very little opportunities, but and as Firewalker says in the chat, that Liam Jones has been in great form as an interceptor. I thought that when they were in competition, Jones either marked it or sport fogs in the few occasions that they did actually have a competition for the ball. But
that's kind of the point, though, isn't it? That's kind of the point. We were actually kicking. We made it easy for Jones, just the same as we made it easy for Radaglia a couple of weeks ago against Geelong.
Yeah, well, by the same token, really, I just would not want to beat a forward in that way. It wouldn't have mattered. I don't think it would have mattered all that much what he really did. I don't think he would have got many more kicks. No,
but he might have been involved a little bit more. Anyway, look, of the rest, I don't really. I thought Isaac was quiet. Isaac had another brain fade too, running into goal.
Oh yeah, that was bloody disappointing. I mean,
I don't understand whether I'm not quite sure what's going on in his head when he's in those situations.
Yeah, look, he's a guy that can do the spectacular or the ridiculous, and a couple of times lately he's chosen the ridiculous. So, but look, he's a bloody good player. He didn't have a good game, but I'm sure he'll have good games in the future.
Yeah. So look, of the rest, Lockie Glant did all right, kicked 1 goal too. Didn't have a lot of opportunities, but we only had half a dozen players really contribute in any meaningful way. So I don't know. Like I said at the beginning, I think it's just a matter of chalking that one up. And the big test will be how we bounce back against Brisbane this week, Mac.
Yeah, I think seriously, if we haven't got too many players out injured, I think we're a chance. And that might sound ridiculous, but Brisbane are unbeatable virtually at the Gabba. But they're a different side when they're away. They're still a good side, don't get me wrong. And we played very B grade football, but if you go back 1 week before that, we played excellent football. If we can reproduce that type of football against Brisbane, I still think we're a winning chance, believe it or not.
Well, at the moment, their midfield is humming, Macca. And our midfield is still our Achilles heel.
It is.
So I guess that's probably my biggest fear at the moment. I'm not convinced that we've got our midfield set up right. I'm not convinced that we're able to control a game where we don't have everything running our way out of stoppage. I really do think we have to have a look at how we commit to the contest and who we commit to the contest. And if, we're not going to have Hinge this week, I would be considering having Dawson, flick between the middle and halfback to try and shake a tag and also get him involved a bit.
He'll be tagged all right.
Well, will he be tagged if he runs back off halfback?
Oh, not necessarily off halfback, but if he plays in the middle, he'll definitely get tagged.
So I don't know whether Brisbane tag, Mac. I'd be quite comfortable in saying I don't think Brisbane will tag. They don't need to.
No, they do. They do. Dunkley's their tagger. Dunkley, he's a fantastic tagger because he cuts the guy out that he's on and he gets the ball himself.
I don't call Dunkley a tagger. I just call him a hard midfielder.
No, he's got a job every week. I've been watching what he's doing. He plays actually behind his opponent, and he waits for the opponent to get the ball and then tackle them. Or if it's slightly to the side, well then he goes for the ball. No, he's a very, very good player, and he's a smart player too.
Yeah. Well, the problem we've got in the midfield at the moment is that our young up-and-comers are having lulls in their careers. Schoenberg, is 50-50 about whether he's even going to come on after my early predictions about him. He's really disappointed, and Sam is obviously going through a bit of a lull as well, although I'm more confident about him shaking that off. The cupboard's a little bit bare now with midfielders. Rankin has proven at times to be okay at stoppage. I wouldn't mind seeing him a little bit more through centre bounce and see how that goes. Rochelle is good when he gets the run of the ball, but defensively I don't think he's that great in the midfield, and we're going to need to be tough against Brisbane.
Well, that's totally right. Saligo, he is a great try, but he had a poor game. Just couldn't get himself in the right spot. It wasn't through lack of effort, but he just couldn't get himself in the right spot at the right time. He was where the ball wasn't all the time. He'd sort of go there and it's gone. And you do have games like that, but he had a very poor game by his own standards. But I think Lairdy's obviously one person that's got to be in the middle, and then Dawson probably will have turns in there. Keys will have turns in there. Sloan will have turns in there. But I do think we should be using the younger boys.
The thing. We just talk about Keys. He only had 3 centre bounce attendances against the Bulldogs. Will he be in there?
Well, he should be. He should be. And if he's going to tag somebody, just get him in there. Get him in there right from the word go. Because he can run all day. But you've also got to give turns. I think you've got to give Jones turns in there. Pedlar's got to get a few more CBAs. You just got to get the boys up and running by giving them a chance and an opportunity in the middle. And if we can even break even in the middle, then we've got every chance of winning the game.
Well, I mean, that's obvious. So, at least we got Muzz back, so we'll be able to match up okay up forward. But Danaher's in great form at the moment, and you just can't afford to ignore him, Hitwood. So, up forward they got a couple of biggies. They're solid down back with Harris Andrews running that defence. You'd expect Tex to come back in for Lockie Gallant unless Tex is actually injured. I don't know, mate. I guess we're a little bit, as I said, we're just a little bit hamstrung because of the poor form of a couple of our younger midfielders. Time to give Bill Dowling a run.
To give,
Billy Dowling a run.
It's probably a little bit premature, Dean. I think he should get a run this year, but I would be doing that more at the end of the season once he's got a lot more meat on him, and Well, I mean, I suppose there's nothing wrong with bringing him in, but you just want to make sure when you bring him in that he is ready to go. I think the kid is going to be good in the long term, but you just don't want to do it prematurely.
Yeah. Look, I don't think they're going to have a lot of choices, to be honest with you. You know, we got a one force change with Mitch Hinge. We've got you'd think Tex for Lockie Gallant. You'd expect Thilthorpe to come back in for Himmelberg if his knee's okay. I don't expect to see too many other changes, to be honest with you.
No, do you think we do have enough tools down back?
Well, who we got to cover? We got to cover Hitwood and Danaher. So we've got Murray and Butts for those two jobs.
Yeah, I'm just thinking if they were to put a ruckman up there, or
well, I mean, Riley O'Brien's going to have to drop back. I mean, look, you know, our problem is not the bookends, in my opinion, Macca. Our problem is the midfield. When it's working well. But I think it relies, as I mentioned before, it relies on a lot of run from behind, and that's why I would actually favour them using Dawson as a Hinge replacement, and you know, maybe bringing Benny Keys into the middle. I think the same as you to a degree. I think we have to nullify their midfield. I don't think we necessarily need to beat them, but I think we need to stop them from getting quality ball out of clearance, out of stoppage. You know what I mean? Force a lot of secondary ball ups, you know, force a lot of congestion, and then try to break from behind rather than just try to get clean possession out of stoppage.
Yeah, 100% agree with that. That's what I was thinking before about bringing Keys in. The whole idea is, as you said, would be to, even if they get the ball, to put them under so much pressure that they don't deliver it, so that, you know, that it's even if they do get a kick out of the centre that's scrambled out under pressure, which puts the ball back into a 50-50 situation. If we can do that, then we are capable of winning the game. If we allow them to dominate the middle, well, of course, then they will win the game.
The key thing for mine, though, to watch out of the whole thing, Macca, is our attitude. I think, you know, we've jumped out of the box. We've been, you know, famous this year for jumping out of the boxes and getting a good start. And after, you know, Darcy's first goal on the weekend, it looked like we're going to do that again. We have to bounce back. The attitude is the key. If win or lose, we need to make sure that mentally we bounce back from this game against the Bulldogs. And, you know, we're playing a top two side, so our expectations should be tempered around that. But it shouldn't be tempered around our attitude and our aggression at the ball. And I think there should be a lot of players that approach training this week with the intent to erase some doubts about their intensity at the contest.
Yep. I reckon it's a situation that whether we win or whether we lose, I think you described it very well. It's how we play the game and the effort we put into the game and our total attitude to try to neutralise the opposition, to get the ball, to use it well, and to do all the things that we did against St Kilda. If we can, even if we lose the game, but we were actually playing very well and they win one, like, you know, by 3 or 4 goals, that's okay. But if it's going to be and I can't see it being a replica of this game. This is something like we haven't played at all this year. So I can't see us playing like that again. But
you know, Brisbane will be looking to prove themselves away. You know, as much as the heat is on us to bounce back, the heat is on Brisbane to actually show something away from the Gabba. So they'll be playing with a point to prove as well, Mac. And, you know, when you look at the ladder, they would be wanting to make sure that they see off any challenges for a top 2 spot. Because for them, a top 2 spot is vital. If they are going to have the best opportunity they possibly can to play in a grand final, they must finish top 2, in my opinion, Brisbane. And they would know that. They've got Port breathing down their necks, and they've got Melbourne, you know, who would just sort of seem to be a bit up and down, but certainly can beat anyone on their day. So this is an important game. Brisbane will be focusing on this game as a win.
They will be. They will be. There's no doubt about that. But we should be also doing exactly the same bloody thing.
Oh, well, of course.
And, they've got behind the fact, we're travelling well. We've got a situation, we were travelling well and we played absolutely shithouse. And that's the kindest word that we could actually give what they performed. It was absolutely terrible. So you would not have expected us to perform. You might have thought we would lose, but you would never have thought we would have played down at that level. We were down at a very low level. So I am sure that all this week it's going to be talking about, forget that game. That was crap. You owe us because you didn't play in that game. You didn't give us what you should be giving us in that game. You should look back at that and just say you feel embarrassed that you actually gave that performance, that you let the team down so badly. And if every player just takes that attitude on board and gives 100% attitude and 100% endeavour and effort and plays as a team, then I think we can actually make their life very difficult. And if we persist with that, maybe even win.
Well, time will tell, Macca, but I reckon that's just about it for us. Look, I need to thank everyone who's joined us on Discord and on YouTube this week. Don't forget, I don't know what not to forget. Don't forget we're back next Sunday night for another weekend wrap. In the meantime, everyone stay healthy and happy, and we'll see you then. Good night, everyone.
Yeah, good night all.